Hello everybody and welcome back to ESG Game. My name is Luke and this is episode 2 of the new podcast that I'm doing called Audio Log, where I bring in a friend, a content creator, someone in gaming, someone in that realm, and we just have a conversation about them, their interests, their history with gaming and how they got into what they're doing. My guest today is someone you may recognize from the Game for All podcast. He's also got a podcast of his own that we will get into in a little bit. This is NBZ. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How you doing, man?
Yeah, not bad at all. Very glad to be talking to you today. It's been a minute. We haven't talked in.
It has, yeah.
Well,
I think we did the It Takes Two spoiler cast earlier this year.
That's right.
Which you hadn't played, right?
Yeah, that was a very interesting one. Because I was the only
Yeah.
person in that 5 that didn't play it, so that was a fun one. That was a fun perspective. I still haven't. I'm waiting for it to come into EA Play.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you'd played it yet.
Not yet. I'm waiting for it to. It's going to be on Game Pass at some point, so I'm just holding out to then, because then I can play it with my missus.
It will inevitably come there, right? Like it screams Game Pass, you know.
Yeah, one way or another, because it's an EA game, so it'll probably be there through EA.
Through their service, yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. So perfect place to start in that case. What are you playing at the moment?
Well, funny you should say that, because I literally, right after work before this, decided to try and play some Splitgate. Have you heard of Splitgate?
I have not, no.
Okay, this has been blowing up recently. It came out on PC a little while ago, but has been blowing up on consoles. It is basically, what if Halo and Portal had a baby, and it was a multiplayer online shooter, and it was free to play and crossplay?
Wow.
Which sounds pretty wild.
Yeah.
And it is so much fun. Holy shit. So it's been really hard to get into a game recently because with so many people playing it, the servers have been full. So like my Steam account said, I've spent an hour in this game. In reality, I hadn't played the game at all, and that hour had been sitting in a queue the whole time.
Yeah.
So they've kind of fixed their servers now, but I just got on to play it this evening, and wow, it's incredibly fun. It has that kind of fast-paced FPS vibe and kind of like that Halo aesthetic, but also like the feel of the gunplay in Halo.
Sure.
But then you can also just pop portals anywhere. So you can use your buttons to like pop one portal here, one over there, and you can just like stand and observe the map and just like shoot people from your portal, and they can shoot back through it.
That's really cool.
It's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been having a great time with it so far. It's really, really cool.
I would imagine that's something Call of Duty might steal in the next year or two then.
Yeah. Well, so I heard the Battlefield Portal thing got announced, but I think that's quite literal, is it? It's not like they're putting portals in Battlefield. It's more of a different thing they're going with there, with like different game modes and that sort of thing, right? So
yeah, I haven't particularly looked into that because I was interested if there was a story, and they're like, no, the story just online. I'm like, cool, not for me then.
Yeah, totally. But this feels like one of those games that will start, proliferating into our circles a bit more. The reason I heard about it is through work, because someone has kids at work who plays a bunch of games, and they said this is like all the kids are playing this right now. So this is like on the ground floor, like kind of Fortnite-esque thing with this game. But yeah, it's absolutely destroying the Steam charts right now. It's doing really, really well. So
awesome. That does sound really cool. I miss Portal, so. That's a cool kind of cross session, because we got some weird bridge constructor Portal, and like a couple of games like that where they did weird crossovers, but we haven't.
I've been meaning to play that for a while. Yeah, that
I played a little bit of it.
Games.
I played a little bit of it. It is kind of fun, but it is a little bit one note because it is just kind of this truck is trying to get here, just put portals in the right place.
How many ways can you do a puzzle where you have to do that? That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else you've been playing recently at all? Or?
Yeah, I mean, loads. I've been bouncing between a bunch of stuff. On Game Pass, I played a game called Omno, which was a kind of chill, platformy, kind of journey-esque game. Very low-poly aesthetic, pretty neat. And then I also have been playing quite a bit of Dodgeball Academia, which is also on Game Pass. That is a sports RPG like the old Mario Tennis, Mario Golf games on GBA, mixed with My Hero Academia, mixed with Pokémon. And when I say Pokémon, like the battle music, like when you walk past a trainer basically, and you'll go into like a dodgeball fight basically. I feel like Knockout City has kind of made dodgeball popular in recent times, but this is kind of riffing on that. And you go into like matches of dodgeball where you're kind of like on these two sides of the field and you're throwing dodgeballs at each other. You have to catch them. There's loads of different variations on it, but it is like an RPG in terms of you're leveling up, you're getting experience, and you're in this school where a bunch of weird monsters are. So that's kind of where the My Hero Academia thing comes in. But I'm really enjoying it so far. It feels like very under the radar at the moment. Not a lot of people are talking about it.
Sure.
But it's totally my type of game, right? Like, as someone who played a lot of Pokémon and who loves that type of aesthetic, it's kind of feels like playing a Saturday morning cartoon, you know? Really, really nice cartoon aesthetic for the characters, and the world's a bit more polygonal. But I'm having a blast with that. I think it's fantastic. So yeah, Game Pass continues to win. I'm also playing Yakuza 5 on Game Pass, and
oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really good. So
cool. I've been dabbling with Like a Dragon.
Nice.
Recently. Because the only other Yakuza game I played was Zero for a little bit. And I liked it. There was just something about it that didn't quite click. Like a Dragon is very different. I thought I'd jump in with that, and it's kind of a similar thing. Like I like the characters, I like the world, but there's something about its version of turn-based combat that hasn't quite clicked with me.
Yeah, from what I heard from people, that's the element that needs the most work is their turn-based combat. Obviously, they've had like years and years of doing this action combat, and so switching to something totally different. I think like in maybe like Yakuza Like a Dragon 4 or 3 is when they'll get there with that stuff, right? Because it seems like that's going to be the case going forward. That's going to be the turn-based franchise. But I'm excited to get that at some point because I'm basically going chronologically through the entire series. So yeah, I started all the way with Kiwami. I had watched Giant Bomb play through Zero, so that's kind of how I knew that story.
Okay.
So I didn't want to replay it. I might replay it sometime later down the line, but I kind of knew what it was. I didn't want to. And so much of Yakuza is the story, right? So much of it is the drama and the kind of weird side quests and that type of thing. And so it felt like I wouldn't get the same impact replaying it. But from Kiwami all the way through to 5 now, and I'm very excited to play Lost Judgment when that comes out on PS5.
Yeah, that looks very cool. That looks very cool. I haven't played Judgment yet either, but I'm hoping it comes to Game Pass at some point. It's on PlayStation now.
I think so,
yeah.
Well, I mean, Sega have this thing of like putting every Yakuza on Game Pass. So if they really want to hold true to that, they should be putting the Judgment games on there as well.
Yeah. But it's a bit worrying though, because there was that talk of it potentially not continuing because of
all Japanese men, basically. Yeah. So the actor Takuya Kimura, he is super famous in Japan, and so he has this agency who runs a bunch of his stuff for him. And there's actors in Japan and stuff. Some of them just aren't allowed to put their face online, which is ridiculous. It's just crazy. And so I think that agency is basically afraid that if they put it on PC, because PC has modding, what if someone turns his face into Shrek? That would be damaging his brand image. So
I heard there's a lot of worry that they might like steal his face and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Yeah. Which is wild. I don't know. It's so bizarre. It's such a backwards decision.
It really is. It really is. But hopefully they I don't know. Maybe it's a switch of protagonist. Maybe Lost Judgment wraps up the character and they move on to another.
I think for the West it doesn't matter as much, right? Because none of us know who he is. We just know him as the guy in Judgment.
Yeah, for sure. And
whereas in Japan he's like super famous. He's like one of the most famous people in Japan.
Sure. And like with the Yakuza series, they stuck with that one character for so long.
Yes.
It's only with Like a Dragon that they've swapped off and gone for a new character. I think with the Judgment series, maybe swapping characters every couple of games could be a benefit for them. Perhaps
it could be.
Maybe let's keep things simple.
But yeah, that's kind of why I got a PS5. That's the other thing I've got recently. I bought a PS5 finally.
Oh, awesome! Nice.
And played through Astro's Playroom, which is brilliant. Just absolutely delightful.
Adore that. I adore
Such a
that
fantastic game.
I've got the soundtrack on Spotify. I love that.
Oh, amazing!
It's awesome.
Is it the GPU song? Like there's one of those songs that has lyrics that you find throughout the level. It's so good.
Yeah, it's great. It's such a great little game, and I'm really excited for whatever the next one is because obviously Astro Rescue Mission was on PlayStation VR, and that was likened to Mario 64, which. It is pretty true. It's fantastic. And then I see Astro's Playroom as like a mini Mario Odyssey almost, the way you jump in between different worlds. So I'm really excited to see what they do with Astro.
Seems like they're working on their biggest project, right? So either it is a sequel to the VR game or it's a sequel to Playroom, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like Sony might want to have like a big VR thing for their new VR. So
Yeah.
probably put more of my money on that. Though I would probably personally prefer a non-VR thing. As someone who doesn't own a PSVR and probably won't get one.
They did come out and say that they were working or wanted to focus on things that could be both, essentially. So it could be a case where you're playing most of it on just PS5 regular, and then there's some extra bits you get for playing in VR or something. That would be nice. Because Astro Rescue Mission, as cool as it is, I don't think it needs to be VR, because you are just kind of like stood in a position and you're looking over the world sort of thing. I don't think
it's basically just like putting you into the world of a platformer, essentially.
Yeah. You need to like look around you to see where he's running, but otherwise you don't need to be in VR. I don't think. I think you could do that just as well outside of VR, and it would it'd reach a wider audience, and that game's fantastic. So that would be very cool for it. But that's in the future. We don't know about PSVR yet. I want to take a step back, and I want to go all the way back to your earliest gaming memories. What was it?
Sure.
What was your first game? What was it that got you into Nintendo? Was Nintendo where you started out, or was it PC based? Yeah, where did your journey start?
Man, I guess if you want to go like real far back, then like edutainment software, right, on my dad's computer is probably where you all go all the way back to.
Sure.
But like aside from that, I guess the first game on a computer that I played was a Hercules game that actually came out on the PS1, but my dad got it on his laptop, and it was a side-scrolling platformer, actually really nice looking, like animation-wise.
Yeah.
And so that is one of the first games that I remember playing.
I have that on my Vita.
Oh, really?
I love that game.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't realize it was on the PS3 Vita store. Maybe I should grab that before that inevitably goes under at some point.
Yeah. So. I think did they re-release it on the Switch with the Lion King?
I don't think so, no. Because I think...
that was Aladdin. That was Aladdin.
It was Aladdin, but that was part of the Disney Afternoon Collection, which I believe is still not on the Switch, I want to say. It's one of those weird ones where you would expect it to be there, but it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that'd be a cool one to put on there, because I love that game.
It would be, yeah. It's also, it's weird, because that one is definitely of a different era of those other ones, because those other ones are like Super Nintendo era, Aladdin and stuff like that, and the Lion King, whereas this was a little further forward with the PS1. But yeah, so that is definitely in terms of computer stuff. I didn't own a console until the PlayStation. So PlayStation was actually my first home console. But before that, I owned a Game Boy, right? So that's kind of my entry into Nintendo was the original Game Boy Color. It was funny. It was bought actually as a birthday present for my sister. For some reason, even though like clearly I was the one who was most interested in games, but for whatever reason my parents bought it for her birthday. But alongside that, Pokemon Blue was purchased for me so I could play it on the system.
Okay.
And inevitably what happened was I stole the Game Boy and just played Pokemon and she never played it. So it de facto became my piece of hardware. So
who's your go-to starter?
I start with water starters every time as a tradition since the beginning. So I picked Squirtle first time, and then second game I picked Totodile, and so since then I've just been like, I'm just gonna pick, no matter what it looks like, no matter if it's terrible or the best or whatever, I have this pact with myself, I'll always choose the water starter no matter what. So
fair. So who's your what's your favorite starter out of all the ones you played?
Probably Totodile. I'd say that just generally because Gold and Silver have the most special place for me in terms of my favorite Pokemon games. They're the ones that I put the most time into. They're the ones that like I think really made me realize that I didn't just like Pokemon superficially. I was like very into it in a deeper way.
Sure.
You know, because the craze, back then was it was the first 150, and that's what everyone was playing and talking about, trading cards on the, and the playground. And then after that, most people like quote unquote grew up, and me and my friend group did not. We stayed playing Pokemon. So yeah, it's one of those things that eventually you're like, yeah, I don't play that, definitely not. But deep inside, you actually are secretly playing it. So.
Oh yeah. For sure. I was I think I dropped out on like Gen 3.
That makes sense.
Because it just kind of
Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, I kind of I struggled with it because I've always, for the longest time, I felt it's like I don't think we need 100 new Pokemon or however many new Pokemon it is each time. I feel like 10, 15 curated ones would be way better than a set of keys. Interesting. For instance. I kind of.
That key Pokemon's very good, by the way. If you ever get into the competitive team of Pokemon, it's pretty good.
Definitely not for me, that one.
No,
I'm not competitive at all in video games. I'm story based. I will play against computers because I'm not good enough for online stuff. I get my ass kicked. So
100%.
I play in my safe space. I love Torchic. I've always been a Torchic guy. I've never been like, I find Ditto really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
as a concept.
I think they've debunked it and said it's not true, but it was it was meant to be like a failed clone of Mew.
I think I have heard that.
A cool theory, and I was like, that is super cool, and that's what got me really interested in. But apparently, it's not true, and I'm a bit sad about that.
Pokemon for me is like the genesis of that kind of playground rumor space, right? You can get Mew if you go to this place and walk along this line.
I'm quite interested in what they do with Pokemon now, because I feel like it's a bit of a nexus point for it, because I think with the Switch and what it's capable of doing, and seeing what Breath of the Wild did and stuff like that, people are so hungry for that kind of open Pokemon game.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Are you more wanting to stay in the traditional style? Would you even want say kind of like they did with Let's Go Pokemon, when they do a remake of an original game and just expand on it, sort of thing? Or are you more of a traditionalist, more into the way Pokemon is, and think that's how it should stay?
Yeah, it's interesting because so a lot of my background in doing internet stuff is that I was a competitive Pokemon player for a good deal of time, and so that when that happens, it's kind of like seeing the Matrix, like when in the movies where I can only see the ones and zeros, but the guy's like, yes, I can see it in my mind. That's kind of what it feels like going from playing just the main Pokemon game to playing competitive Pokemon, and it becomes so easy. And Pokemon's an easy series generally, but it is just like I know exactly what to do. It's almost like I'm zombie walking through the main campaign of these games because I just have all these numbers in my head and whatever, and understand it on that deep level. So I kind of stopped enjoying the single player campaigns of Pokemon a long, long time ago. And so I think it would take a lot for that traditional formula to change. Whereas I kind of am much more interested in seeing what they do with this new Arceus game, right? Because they are trying something a bit different. And fundamentally, it will probably be quite similar in terms of it doesn't look like they're doing an action-based combat system. It seems like they're still on a field, but you'll see a bit more animation and that sort of stuff. But the whole idea of exploring a space and the idea of Pokemon, I think Pokemon Go did a great job of emulating this, of just going and being in different places and finding Pokemon in these different areas. The idea of the exploration definitely excites me as someone who loved Breath of the Wild. I think that there is a great possibility to change what Pokemon is while still maintaining what people like about it. And so I hope that game is good. My question is can they pull it off? And I just am very hesitant about it, mainly because Game Freak as a company are, for one, they're very small, so they're not really equipped to do these big open world games. Their entire experience has been in dedicated handheld systems up to this point. And because the Switch is this weird hybrid, they can do push graphics a bit more, but the other issue is the Switch is maybe not powerful enough, and so you look at that footage of that game and I'm it's kind of rough, right? Frame rate, the textures, it's it's a great idea, but what if you had the Steam Deck level of power, right, as opposed to a Switch? Maybe then you'd be able to do it. So I think that's why a lot of people were disappointed that the OLED model didn't have much of a power boost, or any power boost at all to speak of, because I think people were expecting, this new Pokemon game definitely means they're getting a better Switch, and nope, it doesn't look like it. So
I really feel like with the we'll get into it a bit more a bit later, but I really think maybe the OLED is a thing because parts weren't available quite as readily as they'd like, so they've just held off on a more powerful model. Right. But I still think that more powerful model is going to be coming, whether it's a sequel to the Switch or it's a completely new thing. I highly doubt it's not a real thing. At this
Yeah,
point,
I think
there's too
so.
many.
I feel like
there's
at
too much
least
smoke.
within the next year and a half, it will probably happen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I'm holding out on the OLED, because I don't want to buy one now and then be like in a year and a half time,
Yeah,
be
for
like,
sure.
well, shouldn't have bought that, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, saying that, I recently picked up a Switch Lite and I love it.
Nice.
I really like the Switch Lite. It's far more comfortable, I think.
I think it helps that it
just
has a
play.
real D-pad, something that Nintendo refuses to do with
100%.
Joy-Cons.
Yeah. I think it's just far more comfortable to play on. So I've got like my regular Switch up here where I can capture and stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
just when I want to casually play something, that's just about. And it's really nice. I really like it. I think it was a really, really cool move that they made with that. You mentioned PlayStation was your first console. Where did you realize that Nintendo was where you wanted to play all of your games, really, or where that held most of your interest?
Totally. I think Pokemon was a big factor in it, because I would go around to my friends' houses and they would have Pokemon Stadium, and I'd be like, well, I can't do this on my PlayStation. I never owned an N64. GameCube was actually my first Nintendo home console.
Oh, same here.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of that was driven by my friends, really, right? Because I had a PlayStation, a couple of my friends both had N64s and then had GameCubes after that.
Sure.
And it was going around to their houses and, playing Mario Party and like playing Mario Tennis on N64 and all these types of games that I think to me as a person spoke to me a bit more than the kind of dark, gritty stuff. Like as a kid, and still to this day, I prefer a bright, cheery aesthetic as opposed to a dark, gritty one for the most part.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's just a personality thing. And so despite the fact that my dad bought me a PlayStation, I had great fun with the PlayStation. I had really good games on there that I really enjoyed. But I always gravitated a bit more to the experiences that Nintendo were making, which is why I wanted to get a GameCube. Really, I think Smash Brothers Melee was the game that convinced me the most. I have this like clear memory of walking to my friend's house, seeing Smash Melee for the first time, and my mind just being blown by it, and just being like, holy shit, this is incredible. These graphics are amazing. I have to have this console. This is the one I have to have. And yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. And then I got it for the Christmas. I think GameCube came out in 2002 in Europe, and I got it for Christmas of 2002,
Nice.
along with a Star Wars game, Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast.
Oh, okay, nice.
Which is interesting. And yeah, that game actually got re-released recently on Switch. I've been thinking about picking it up again because it's one that I never got that far in, because it is it kind of starts off as a first-person shooter before you get your lightsaber. So it took me like a while to be like, oh man, this is just too hard for me as a kid. So I never really got that far in it. But yeah, GameCube was me getting into Nintendo, and yeah, I've kind of been a Nintendo console guy ever since. But yeah, I play everything at this point in time. Once you have the means, once you're able to, get stuff, then that's kind of where I lent to, and it kind of killed any idea of like console wars in my brain. I think still is perpetuated by a lot of people these days. But yeah,
absolutely is. So you talked about it a little bit earlier. Where did your competitive Pokemon career, we'll say, start? Because obviously that's where you started out on YouTube as well, right? That was
yeah.
How did that all come about?
So me and my friends were all very into Pokemon, to the extent that when my dad was on a business trip to America and Diamond and Pearl were already out there, they hadn't come out in Europe yet. It was going to be another like 2 or 3 months before they came out here. Back in the days when we had to wait so long for games to come out here. So he bought 3 copies of the game, 2 Diamond, 1 Pearl, for me and my 2 friends. And yeah, that was the game that first introduced online play for Pokemon. So you could go online and play against other people from around the world. And I think because of that, it opened up a lot more people to this idea of competitive Pokemon, which was going online, building a team, and fighting against someone else. And it's a really hard thing to explain, because I think Pokemon on its surface level, you look at it and it's like, oh, you use the water move on the fire guy, he's dead. Pokemon's easy, right? But competitive Pokemon is like... I explain it almost like it's chess, where you have these pieces and you know what your opponent has, and so you're switching constantly. You're trying to predict what they're going to do. You're kind of like, you have a strategy and a synergy built around these 6 Pokemon, and the thrill of it, like when I first started doing it, it was unlike anything else I'd played before. I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible, and like winning matches and stuff just felt so exhilarating. And yeah, it was a lot of work back then, right? Of like
Sure.
training them correctly, and like I have 900 and something hours in Pokemon Diamond, and most of that is the competitive side of like
Sure.
breeding Pokemon, making Pokemon, battling other people, and yeah, and a lot of it back then was just like learning from the early internet. You know, YouTube was very nascent. There are a few people doing it on there, and I just kind of learned by watching, essentially, because there are a few people who were doing the battles, and I learned, and I decided I'm just going to record these for myself. I was on a Nintendo forum at the time, and there were a lot of people playing it there, and so I mainly just started recording it to show those people, to be like, hey, I had this match, do you want to take a look at it?
Sure.
And from that, it naturally just grew somehow.
Yeah.
Partly, I think, because most people who were doing it were American, and so because I was British, my voice stood out amongst those, so it was like a bit of a differentiating factor. So it just kind of blew up from there, and I just kept doing it for a long time until I got bored, basically, and then I stopped. So I guess 7 years or so of playing competitive Pokemon. But
Wow. Is that something you'd like to see kind of embedded in, maybe not necessarily the mainline Pokemon games, but if they released a Pokemon game that was more competitive focused and
just
that
focused
deeper
on that,
kind of,
yeah.
is that something you'd be interested in actually coming out? Because
I would love to see them do that, because frankly it is and they've reduced the barrier to entry significantly. I think they have kind of realized, because they run their own tournaments as well now, and so I think they do understand that it's something that the community wants, and it's these days it's way easier if you want to pick up Sword and Shield and start doing competitive stuff. Much less barrier to entry than there used to be, but it's still, you still have to put in a lot of work. There are these programs online, or these websites that allow you to play just through a web browser, basically, and you can create Pokemon just by typing in the numbers and just putting them in and being like, I want this guy, type it in, put it in. And so I think if they had a mode that, like, when you finish the game and you got to the end and it doesn't really matter anymore, just let people choose whatever Pokemon they want, type in the numbers they want, and then just have a team ready to go and just go and play. And just reduce all the friction, because I think that would make it a much easier sell for a lot of people who like want to get into this stuff but realize, it's a lot of a time investment,
for sure. So. I wonder if there is almost like a community of people who, like you, were really into the competitive stuff but fell off of Pokemon because there wasn't maybe enough of it, and they found it was too easy. So maybe like a new Pokemon arcade would be something worth investing in, looking into, because you can have the open world, you go around finding Pokemon and doing those bits, but then you come back to the central competitive angle where you are fighting in this Pokemon League sort of thing. I think that could be something that's really cool to look into, because that's a lot of the premise of like the TV show and stuff like that. So bringing it back over into the games and maybe re-appealing to those people that fell off because Pokemon is too easy, sort of thing. Maybe that could be another avenue they can go down, because they are kind of retreading old ground a little bit with like Pokemon Snap, for instance. So perhaps there's that is another avenue they can go down. So how did your Nintendo podcast come to life? Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that one?
Sure. So that was, I guess, kind of a splinter of what I was doing on my YouTube channel, right? I got into podcasts around, I want to say 2010. I think end of 2010 is when I got into listening to podcasts. I went to uni and had a bunch of spare time and was walking to lectures and stuff. And I was like, oh, this podcast thing sounds like a cool thing. And that's how I discovered Podcast Beyond back in the day, and Radio Free Nintendo, which is my favorite Nintendo podcast. And I just loved the idea of people just really talking in depth about games in a way that I hadn't thought about before, and I thought it was just a really cool thing. And eventually me and my friend, who both listened to loads of them, decided let's just start one, because I have this YouTube channel, I kind of have this built-in audience. Let's do it on there and see how it goes. And it eventually morphed into something that was more focused on iTunes and kind of Spotify and that kind of arena, like more of an audio based thing, and also had its own channel spin-off for it. So it was just kind of grew out of that. And I've known Bally since I was 5 years old.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
And he's getting married at the end of this month. So it's been a long time that I've known that guy. So yeah, we have grown up playing games together and Nintendo stuff. And he's one of those friends who had the N64 that I would go over and play, and we'd play Pokemon Stadium and that sort of thing. So
that's awesome.
So we just decided we were going to start it and talk about Nintendo stuff, and we've been going since 2014, end of 2013 actually, end of 2013. So a long time now.
Awesome, yeah. And you've just had a massive milestone as well.
Yes,
you did a massive episode, which
enormous. 200 episodes, and we do this thing every 50 episodes where we make this absurd list of our favorite 50 games ever, where we have to decide between us and like debate. It's very much inspired by what Giant Bomb does with their game of the year stuff.
Yeah.
It was a 5-hour podcast, so it was definitely hey, if you want some meaty content, go over there and check it out. So
man, that those things are a lot of fun, and like
totally.
Obviously, this is very, very early on. Yeah, this is only episode 2, but if we could get anywhere near the sort of numbers you've done, that would be incredible, because you have a very entertaining podcast, and it's very Nintendo heavy, but you don't stick there. You talk about other things and other places. Totally. So with that in mind, you're obviously big into like your Nintendo Switch. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Steam Deck, because that's I'm very curious about it, because the handheld gaming is massive in Japan, and that's where the Nintendo Switch is doing huge numbers. That's where the Vita did really well before it unfortunately got killed off. How do you think that the Steam Deck could impact Nintendo's grip on this kind? Because they've switched quite a lot. They don't have their dedicated home console anymore. They've put all their chips into it is a home console as well, but they've put more chips into it being portable. And now Steam's taken notice of that. They're coming in with a far more powerful machine, bit bigger, bit chunkier, but it is going to be able to play, The Witcher, for instance, at a higher resolution, higher frame rate, all of that goodness on a similar sort of size handheld. So are you excited for the Steam Deck? How do you think it could potentially do compared to Nintendo?
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by it. I did try to order one and failed multiple times, and did not get an order in.
I managed to, luckily.
Oh, well done! Congrats. So I will inevitably own one of these things. Yeah. And as much as I talk about Nintendo and stuff like that, and that is my it's my origin. These days I play most of my stuff on PC, and I just got a new PC. I know you got a new one as well. I think we got it from the same place. And have a 3080 in it. Bought a brand new monitor, 27-inch, 1440p, 144 hertz.
Lovely.
Gorgeous. Absolutely stunning, man. And so that is where most of my game playing goes in terms of Game Pass on PC, in terms of my ridiculous Steam library. I believe I have 397 games on Steam.
Sure.
So it's hell of a backlog. A lot of games I've got to play on there. And naturally, handheld is what I gravitate towards. So the idea of a handheld that I can access my entire Steam library, as well as Epic games, as well as potentially Game Pass games, and then factor in, this is basically a PC, so I could just put RetroArch on it and play emulation games on it as well. It's very appealing for me personally. So that said, I will inevitably own one of these things. I am actually interested, because I'm not getting it straight away, to see what people say about it, though. So it gives me kind of a buffer zone of, okay, everyone will get theirs and they will have a bunch of time with it. I'll get to know about battery life and those types of things, and how heavy it is, and like, can you hold it in one hand without your wrist falling off? I've been playing the new Phoenix Wright game, The Great Ace Attorney, which
awesome,
loving that game. And I was also eating peanuts at the same time, and so I had like one hand eating peanuts, the other hand holding the Switch, and like even the Switch, kind of heavy holding it with one hand, right? So the Steam Deck, I don't think I would be able to do that, right? It definitely feels less portable when you look at it. It feels like a lot heavier, larger. It's the type of thing you would take on a plane, but wouldn't necessarily play at a bus stop.
For sure.
It's that kind of differentiation. So Yeah, I'm really interested in it. I was watching a bunch of videos today because there was a bunch of previews that have gone up recently. Linus Tech Tips had his video where he like looked in detail at it and took like this thermal goggles and like had a look at where the heat was being put on the back of it to see like how hot it would get in your hands and that type of thing. But from all accounts so far, it seems like it's going to be pretty good. And I guess my one question is like how well will it do in the wider market? Because I think one of the successful things about Nintendo is they have a very simple message, which is like, get this thing out of the box, put it in a thing, it's got Mario on it, it's got Zelda on it, boom, you're done. It's cheap enough for a family. This definitely to me speaks much more to a person who is into video games. I mean, you have to have a Steam account to even order one at the moment, right? And to add to that, you have to have a Steam account that had ordered or had bought a game prior to June of this year to even get a reservation in. So they are very much right now speaking to an audience who already owns a PC, who wants to buy one of these, who has a massive Steam library to back it up. I'm curious about, because they've talked about like the open platform nature of this. They said the Steam OS is like available for anyone to use. So does this go in the direction of other manufacturers make their own ones? And I'm kind of worried about that because I think the Steam machine was an example of how that can go really wrong.
100%.
So if other manufacturers start making these things and then they just all get sold and then everyone's like, which one do I buy? I don't know. This one I bought, it's bad versus this one. I like at the moment that they are sticking very rigidly to like, this is made by Valve, this is our one single device, and this is how it's going to work. So
I think a lot of the appeal of it as well. So this has been something that's been rumored for quite a while, but the assumption with it is that it was going to be very costly because you look at the VR headset is one of the most expensive, even though it is
like £1,000 or something.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it's it's really highly rated. It's very expensive, but it seems they're eating most of the cost on this, which has shocked a lot of people because it's only coming out at about £50, $50 more than the Switch OLED. And like I said, there's a significant jump in performance. Granted, the battery isn't going to be as big as not as big, but as powerful and as long lasting potentially because of the added power and stuff like that. But being able to just play regular PC games on, it is just a mini PC. Is going to be very interesting, I think, because it's not. I've seen a couple of pictures where it's compared to. I don't know which Switch model it is. I take it is just the original Switch, but it doesn't look. It looks a bit chunkier. It looks a fair whack chunkier, but it doesn't look too much like longer and bigger sort of thing. So I'm very curious, and this is something I've dreamt of for a long time because I've always preferred playing stuff like Celeste and games like that on handheld. It just feels more natural. It just feels like it's the place to play it. And I've got so many indie games on Steam, like Death's Door, for instance. I've been playing recently. I love that game, but it's really good. Man, do I want to play it on handheld. Handheld is the place for that, I think. So I'm very, very excited. And
the other thing with a game like that is like the way it looks, because it's more of a 3D game. And like those style of games on Switch don't tend to run as well. Optimization wise. So even if it does come to Switch, it's like, well, it's kind of a compromised version of the game versus a Steam Deck where it's like, no, this is the full game.
Because I mean, we kind of saw that with like Ori, for instance. That it even coming out on Xbox on day one, that had a lot of issue.
Major problems. For sure.
Then obviously it did eventually come to the Switch. Or something like Hades, for instance. There's a fairly big difference from where it runs on PC to where it runs on handheld, and maybe that's not going to be a problem with the Steam Deck anymore. Maybe that is going to be. And then I do wonder if games are going to be made specifically with the Steam Deck in mind, kind of like this is VR made. This is made for VR, and it's meant to be played that way, like Half-Life Alyx, for instance. I do wonder if this is going to be a platform where people are like, no, this is made to play on the Steam Deck. It's a very interesting time because everyone's looking at maybe Xbox has a handheld, maybe, and then Steam just come out of nowhere and is like, hey, here you go, this is actually real, sort of thing. Comparatively, what were your thoughts when the Switch OLED got announced?
I was like, well, I guess I don't have to buy one of those then. Basically, is what it boiled down to. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like as someone who has been through the ringer a few times, it didn't surprise me at all. I was
Sure.
like, oh yeah, that's Nintendo. Yep, that's what they do. Makes
Yeah.
total sense. Yeah, no power increase because they don't care about that. They haven't since the GameCube. You know, honestly, it's a relatively shrewd move from them because, frankly, this will sell gangbusters regardless.
Probably, yeah.
They don't have to do much re-engineering of the hardware. It's kind of the same thing. They're going to stick with the same Joy-Cons. For God's sake, I wish they would change them.
Yeah.
My goodness, I don't want to have like a third pair at some point in the system's life cycle, but I feel like I will. Just the drift issues are persistent. But yeah, ultimately, it's a thing that I don't need right now. And I would like to have a new Switch at some point, but I'm perfectly fine with my current one. And like a slightly bigger screen, an OLED display. I've got an OLED Vita. It's a great looking screen.
Oh,
I
nice.
really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's worth me putting down the full money to get a whole new system at the moment, especially as we talked about earlier. If they do come out with a system that does push it a bit more, then I will regret the purchase.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those for me as well where part of me wants one. I think the new stand's really cool.
Totally.
I think that stand is very, very cool.
I played a bunch of Astral Chain on a plane to America, and having that stand on the back of that was a little flimsy and a bit of turbulence. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah. I've had it. So. I remember the first time it snapped off. I was like, oh no! I didn't realize it came off, and I was like, oh god, there it goes back on. That's fine. That's okay. But yeah, it was kind of the same way I reacted to the PlayStation 4 Pro at first. It's like, fine, whatever. If my PS4 breaks, then maybe I'll get one of these.
Just get one of those, yeah. Totally.
Yeah, it's not. And even now, with having the Switch Lite, I don't even know if my regular Switch, dying or what have you, would. I mean, I guess it would for capture sake and stuff like that, but
yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not too fast. I was pretty.
It's an upgrade for people who play handheld mostly, right?
Yeah.
And so if you already have a dedicated handheld Switch with the Lite, then you don't necessarily need it.
Yeah, for sure. It was disappointing, but I think the writing was kind of on the wall when they had their event. Nothing got said, and then it was just quietly announced on a Tuesday or something. Yeah. It was like, okay, cool. Nothing huge to get excited about. There are, like I said, there are some cool additions to it, but it's not like the Pro or the next Switch that we anticipated. Do you think?
Definitely not.
Do you think it will be a Switch Pro, or do you think it will just be like the next Switch, like Switch 2 or whatever they would call it?
I mean, I think it's more likely, I would say, that it's just going to be the next one. Just the way Nintendo behaves with this stuff. But again, they are by far the most difficult company to predict in the industry. You never have they put out a thing called Ring Fit Adventure. It's now in the top 10 best-selling Switch games. Yeah, over 11 million.
Still very difficult to get hold of.
Yeah. So you just don't know. First of all, what they're going to put out, and then how much of a success it will even be, because they're just so unpredictable. I think there is a pattern you could follow, which is okay, so the Switch OLED is kind of like the 3DS XL, because that was more of a screen jump, wasn't a power jump, but then you had the 3DS, the new 3DS, which was a slight power jump, and that came after that, and then they had the different sizes of that. So they're kind of maybe going in a different order here, where they did the 2DS version, which is the Switch Lite first, and then they did this one, so that theoretically they could do another one, and because they are treating this so much more like a handheld in terms of doing different models of it and that type of thing, it leads me to believe that they are more likely to follow the blueprint they've done before. But again, is there even a blueprint, or are we just all reading into this too much?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, there's a lot of smoke with whatever this next more powerful Switch might be. There's so much talk around it. That has to have come from somewhere. It's not just. Hopefully, it's not just someone's made it up, and so many people are falling down that train.
I mean, Bloomberg are a very reputable source, right? So I think them staking a claim on there will be this jump, or at least there might be in the next one, still pretty feasible, right?
Yeah. You'd hope so. Yeah. You'd hope so. You mentioned earlier about playing Game Pass quite a lot on PC. Yeah. What do you think the connection between, not necessarily Switch specifically, but Nintendo and Xbox is? Because that Switch has been on Phil Spencer's shelf a couple of times.
He likes it,
What do you think that could be?
He's claimed none of that means anything. Well, I don't believe that, man. I don't believe him for a second.
No.
Yeah, it's. I think it's one of those really long-term things. Like I think a relationship with Nintendo is a thing that had to be cultivated for a long time from Microsoft's end, to even get Banjo in Smash. Like, man, wow.
That's
I was stunned that even happened.
Yeah.
But the fact that it has, the fact that they've put their games on there, or both Ori games are on there, Cuphead is on. Obviously, Cuphead's now on PlayStation as well, which is even wilder.
Yeah, Cuphead's an odd one because they don't actually own anything to do with Cuphead. It was just kind of published there. Which is,
Ori and Cuphead are both situations where they don't own the studios, but they have like very close partnerships with those developers. I believe Private Division is actually funding Moon Studios' next game, which is interesting. Which is the
because they're moving away from Ori, which is
they're doing something different. Apparently, an action RPG. So I'm
very interesting. Very interesting.
But
I'm not honestly sure if we'll see Game Pass on Nintendo. I just don't think I don't think with the way Nintendo works, I don't think it would work. So I think so much...
It's cutting into their bottom line, right? Like, if you can play a game like, I don't know, Dodgeball Academia just came out. It's on Switch, it's on Game Pass. If you could just go to the Game Pass app on Switch and play it there, why would you do it on their store and then give Nintendo their 30% cut? For them, monetarily, doesn't really work out.
I mean, this is a company that don't do sales.
And if they do, it's like tiny. A whole 30% off Mario Kart 8 that has been out for 19 years.
I have been waiting for Link's Awakening to be discounted for a good while, so I can pick it up.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna be waiting for a good while still.
You will be, yeah.
I wonder if it's more of an xCloud sort of thing because they obviously do bits of streaming here and there with like Control and Resident Evil. So I wonder if the partnership there is maybe you'll be able to stream, I don't know, maybe like Halo or games specifically that you will not be able to get on Switch, that will not cut into Nintendo's bottom line. I do wonder if that's possibly a direction they go in, because there is no way in my head that you're going to see a Nintendo game on Game Pass. I don't think there's any way that Nintendo goes somewhere. I feel like it's all, no, you're coming to us.
100%.
You can have a form of the Master Chief Collection on Nintendo, or something of that ilk. I cannot see, like I said before, I cannot see Game Pass being on there unless it's a very, very curated.
And I think that kind of works for Microsoft, right? Because they're all about getting Game Pass everywhere else, whereas Nintendo are like, come to us, right? So
exactly.
Them getting their games, they're like, let's put these Ori games out there because we want to get them to more people. And Nintendo are like, we would like more games on our store, please. Yes, thank you. So so in that sense, it kind of does work. But
and it kind of answer a bit of a question that Nintendo have had for a while with the third-party partnerships. So obviously Ubisoft has been a big one for them. And we saw through like the Wii and Wii U era that it kind of died off a bit. That third-party stuff was a bit harder to come by on those systems, and they relied very heavily on their own stuff. So maybe Xbox could be a third party that helps them out. Maybe, like I said,
I mean, in some senses, they already are, right, with publishing those games. You boot up Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and it says Xbox Game Studios on your Switch when you load it up. Same with Minecraft and that type of thing.
Weird to see.
Yeah.
I do wonder if, like I said, xCloud might be the thing. I wonder if xCloud could be the thing, and then you could play more demanding games, maybe like Gears and stuff like that through your Switch,
totally,
potentially. But I would be beyond shocked to see any kind of, even like I said, like a curated version of Game Pass. I'd be very, very surprised, even if it's just Xbox games. I can't imagine it.
I feel like if it does happen, it will be in 10 years' time, probably. Like it feels like a really long-term thing that, Phil Spencer seems to me like the sort of person who will get Game Pass everywhere eventually, and will eventually be in a place where it's literally Netflix, where you download the app on whatever device you have and you can play from wherever. That's the future they're going towards, and they've been pretty honest and open about that. I think. So if it even comes down to that. But Nintendo don't even have a Netflix app on the Switch, right? So like, even in that case, it's
I mean, would you want one?
I would. I don't know. As someone who doesn't own an iPad or like a portable way to watch videos aside from my phone, which is a bit too small for my taste. I would like to have that personally. I watched. It's really funny. One of my most hours dumped into on the Wii U is the internet browser on the Wii U. Because it was like one of the best YouTube machines of all time. And I watch a fuckload of YouTube videos. So, it was really great for that stuff because you could like put it up on the screen and then scroll on the gamepad. It's brilliant. And there has not been, that replicated on the Switch, unfortunately. So.
Fair. Well, I mean, that could be something that comes with the Switch 2 or the Switch Pro or whatever. That could be
never, because I think Nintendo just doesn't. They're just like, we're all about games. We don't really care.
Yeah.
Whatever. Leave us alone.
So. Yeah, for sure. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier on your podcast, you don't just talk about Nintendo. You don't just talk about gaming. Mm-hmm. You are a big Star Wars fan as well.
I love Star Wars, man. Yeah.
But did that come with the movies first, or did you find Star Wars through video games?
Yeah, it was the movies. I was I don't want to say 6 years old. My auntie is a massive Star Wars fan from back in the day. So she's like grew up, went to see the movies when she was younger, and was very into them. And her kids are like very into them now as well. And she, for my birth or for Christmas, gave me the VHS box set of the special edition of 4, 5, and 6. Cool. And so my introduction was watching them through VHS, which was, I just wore out those tapes, honestly. Like,
I still have mine.
Nice.
I've still got the original ones. I've refused, like when I was leaving my mum's, I was like, I'm taking these.
Yeah, totally. Even if you don't have a VHS player to play the one, you just got to keep those,
100%.
Is it like the Darth Vader box with like his face on it and like the kind of gold? That's the version I have. I don't know how many versions there were, but
no, I think I've just got whatever the original box arts are, sort of thing. I don't have any special edition. I just got whatever ones it was we were able to pick up, sort of thing.
Yeah, so that's what I grew up on. Those are the ones that I watched, and so I was very into Star Wars before the prequels got announced, and then it was announced they were doing more of them, and so like as a 10-year-old, whatever, went to see Phantom Menace, and my mind was blown, man. Double-bladed lightsaber, that fight at the end, still probably my favorite lightsaber duel in the entire series.
Yeah, very cool.
Especially like after Qui-Gon has died. Spoilers, of course, for Star Wars. who's not seen Star Wars? And then Obi-Wan comes out against Darth Maul, and that like split like 10 seconds or so that they have, it's just like, oh, it's fire. It's absolutely love it. I, as someone, because of that, because I grew up on the prequels and like have a lot of nostalgia for them, when people talk about them these days and they're like, they're terrible, they're the worst movies ever, I'm like, I can't see it just because I have that like nostalgia goggles over my eyes. And I definitely noticed, like, we rewatched episode 2 last year during lockdown. Me and my sister, it's one of her favorite ones. And she always used to be like, oh, Anakin, I love Anakin. And then you get to it and you're like, Anakin's a bit of a creep, like a really big creep, in fact. And like re-examining it years later, that I don't think that movie holds up that well comparatively.
No. Star Wars is one for me, especially with the newer trilogy, where it's just, I don't really care if it's great. Yeah. I just enjoy being in the world, sort of thing. I didn't really like episode 9. I thought it was a lot of a mess, but I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed being back in the Star Wars universe. Same with stuff like Solo, for instance. Like, it's not the greatest movie, 100%. But I enjoyed how stupid it was. I enjoyed being in that world. I want to go so deep on the Star Wars conversation with you.
Go for it.
We will do that on another time.
Yes.
What's your favorite Star Wars game though? Because we obviously had Fallen Order not too long ago, and that is up there as one of the better Star Wars games.
Definitely up there. Yeah, I think probably quality-wise, that's probably the best one I've played. There's been so many over the years, right? Like I remember playing a bunch of Rogue Squadron on GameCube with my friend. I never owned it myself. I actually bought it relatively recently in a second-hand shop. I saw it and I was like, yeah, I've got to pick that up. Played a bunch of some GBA Star Wars games. There was an Attack of the Clones side scroller that was not very good, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Pixel art and like you're going through these levels. For me, I think probably my most nostalgic ones are there's a game on PS1 called The Phantom Menace, which is just based on the movie. It's the movie tie-in game.
I love that game.
I absolutely Had a great time with that.
Same.
When I was younger, you just look up the cheat codes, right? And you just put on invincibility. And I remember just going to Tatooine and just being like a GTA player where I just like go around just killing everybody in Tatooine. Like I didn't have a PS2, right? So like, but having those GTA-esque experiences, I just took them where I could, right? And so that kind of felt in a way like that. But it was very linear, right? It was like going through the story arc of the game, and you'd go through the Gungan swamps and
I actually remember getting stuck in the Gungan swamps.
It was confusing, man.
Yeah, there was this weird platforming bit where you had to jump on like tree stumps, and I just couldn't figure it out.
That game was hard when especially as a kid. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm dying here all the time. It's So even getting past that first level of my own accord was a challenge, but I did it eventually. And then of course I put in the cheat codes and just could jump to any level I want. Beat Darth Maul at the end, all that stuff.
Nice.
So I love that game. That has a really special place for me. The other one is on GBA, Jedi Power Battles, which I think also came out on PlayStation. It was a different type of game. It was during that era where they would name the game the same thing on handheld and console, but they'd be two completely different games developed by two completely different teams. But the version of Jedi Power Battles on GBA was like this isometric game where you had your lightsaber, you run around, you could switch characters, play as Mace Windu, play as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and again followed the kind of episode 1 storyline, but was a different type of like top-down action game. So for me, those are my most like nostalgic Star Wars games, those two. But yeah, I have a lot of fondness for playing the multiplayer actually of Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. Me and one of my other friends, what we used to do is we used to just turn on all the bots, and we would just get our lightsabers and just go into the multiplayer maps of that game and just run around just slicing them all up. And it was a great time. We used to do that a lot with because I didn't grow up with GoldenEye on N64. We played a lot of 007 Nightfire on GameCube. Which was pretty much like a sequel to GoldenEye in terms of its multiplayer maps and that sort of thing. And me and this friend, we would play a bunch of that multiplayer with bots, and we'd also do a bunch of Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. So have really good memories of that. But like you said, I think in terms of the best game, it is probably Fallen Order quality wise. I think the lightsaber dual boss battles in that game are some of my favorite boss fights. They're so much fun.
And I think
incredibly good.
I think the characters are all exceptional as well. I think I forget her actual name, but Second Sister, I genuinely wish excuse me, I genuinely wish we actually played the game from her perspective, because I think she's so interesting. And not gonna spoil it because it's awesome, but like the ending, that just ending sequence after you do her boss fight is just insane, incredible.
It's terrifying, man. It's terrifying.
Oh yeah, it is. They've done of all the missteps they've done a very good job since like Rogue One and going forward of making Vader intimidating again, because you kind of almost saw him too much, and he kind of lost a bit of that edge. He lost a bit of that all shit sort of thing. But with these like small appearances, he's getting it back again. Totally. Is there a Star Wars game that should be canon that isn't? Because obviously so many of them and the expanded universe got just cut out, and it was just kind of they're still kind of hanging around as almost like myths and like tales, sort of thing, but they're not actually actual canon sort of thing.
That's interesting.
For me, for instance, I just want Starkiller, because I think he was an awesome character. I thought the Force Awakens was a very, very good game.
Force Unleashed, right?
Force Unleashed, sorry, yes. Yeah. Less said about his sequel, the better, because that was that was something else. I was so disappointed. But it was just such an awesome story, having Vader having this secret apprentice that no one knew about, and he was going to try and take over the Emperor, and then he found out, and then shit hit the fan. I thought that was very cool, and there's allusions to it in other places, like Mads Mikkelsen's character shares his name, for instance, in Rogue One. But I just want that translated either to the big screen, or it is just referenced. Maybe he comes back as an older character, maybe he didn't die or what have you. I think it was such a cool story that it's just a shame it's not actually part of the canon anymore. Do you have a game or even anything just in general like that?
Well, you actually just reminded me, I didn't mention it, but last year I finished and played through for the first time KOTOR, the original Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Which He's fantastic, actually, and probably would be my other answer for like the best Star Wars game.
I think they're remaking that. I think
that's the rumor at the moment. Yeah, that is the rumor, which would be great, I think, because it's one of those games that I really enjoyed, but like the D&D style combat, like it has not aged super well.
Yeah, I really struggled with it when I tried.
The dice rolls and stuff like that. It's just like I don't really understand how this works, and it feels a bit janky. And like, but the rest of it is so good. Like the narrative and the storytelling and the side quests, and all that stuff, really rich. And I just want more of like that really old Republic stuff, which they are doing a bit more of with the books now. There's these High Republic books that have come out, which I need to read. I need to go and read those.
That's what I meant to be going with the films as well, right? They're doing a new trilogy where it's like thousands of years before, which I hope so. Super interesting.
One of the TV shows I think is going to be focused on something like that. I think. But yeah, I definitely would love to see another KOTOR, or at least a game set in that era of the universe where like there's hundreds of Sith, hundreds of Jedi all running around being crazy, you know. That would be a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't think I've really played that many non-canon games aside from that, because I think for me, I would have loved to see the games that got cancelled before they came out, right? Like the Visceral
1313,
game,
1313,
you know,
that was one of the few cancelled games that genuinely hurt. I was so into that. We only saw a small snippet of it. Yeah, I was so excited. I was like,
feels like there's a curse of like making an Uncharted style Star Wars game. It's like first that, then Amy Hennig's game, and I wouldn't necessarily class Fallen Order as an Uncharted style game. It feels more as like kind of Metroidvania Souls-ish game. But it still has those elements, right?
It had the train section at the beginning. 100%. I'm very, very excited for whatever they do with the Force Unleashed next. And obviously now Star Wars has expanded. It's not just EA anymore. So I'm very excited to see what people can do with it. We're going to move into our final segment now. Yeah. Which I ask every guest that's going to be coming on here to bring with them a game they feel is underappreciated, and just, you know, have a wee chat with the people as to why they think it is and why they love it so much. So Naman, what game have you brought with you today?
Well, I've got a couple of options, but I think if we're talking about underappreciated, I think I will go with Codename Steam, a game that came out for the Nintendo 3DS and was slammed. You talked earlier about Nintendo games never going down in price. Codename Steam is a rare example of a first-party Nintendo game whose price crashed like a bomb. Absolutely dived into the bargain bin. You can still probably get copies of it to this day for like £5 or less. It is similar to Metroid Other M, of like, did not do well at all. Nobody bought it, and so just got destroyed. But it is made by one of my favorite developers, maybe my favorite developer in the industry, Intelligent Systems, who make or used to make Advance Wars, now mainly make Fire Emblem games. They make the Paper Mario games. They, for me, make some really good strategy stuff, right? And so this idea that they're taking this weird steampunk aesthetic with like classic characters from literature. Abraham Lincoln is in there. You got Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Like all these weird characters in this Silver Age comic book style on the 3DS that's aping Valkyria Chronicles. And it's like, that's definitely not going to work, right? And I think for most people, it doesn't. For me, it absolutely did, and it really, really clicked with me. I hadn't played Valkyria Chronicles when I played this, and I've since played it. I would say Valkyria Chronicles is a better game overall than Codename Steam. But Codename Steam is incredibly fun and has that kind of like third-person tactical shooter vibe to it, while also being a turn-based strategy game. Like there's action components of moving around your forces and hiding behind cover and stuff like that, and like enemies triggering their Overwatch abilities and like shooting you if you move into the wrong space. And it has like the fog of war elements of a strategy game where you're kind of like waiting for enemies to come towards you. But it's really challenging, and I think part of its problem with people was its difficulty was pretty brutal. And I think at launch, the other thing was when it launched, it came out in the US first, like we were talking about, had to wait an extra 3 months for that to come out here. And so they patched it after that in order to like speed up the turn, because it took like ages for the enemies to move around and you were sitting there doing nothing. And they added like a 2x speed mode. So by the time I played it when it came out here, it had all that stuff, and it had a lot of the kind of changes they'd made, which made it much easier to get into. And yeah, I think it is one of those weird games that I clicked with that I don't think many other people did, just going by its sales, but also people I've heard talk about it over the years. No one really likes it, but I think it's a really well-made game, and I love it, and I think it deserves more love. I'd love to see a sequel. It will never happen, but I'd love to see a sequel.
It's one of those that's definitely it's picked up a cult following, because it's not one I've played, but I've heard it.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at a picture of Abraham Lincoln in it, and he looks incredible.
You get into a mech,
so cool.
an Abraham Lincoln mech, and punch people.
No way. I think I need to pick this game up. I think
it's super cheap. Fun. It's incredibly cheap.
I mean, that's a bonus. Is it one that's I take it hasn't, but has it been re-released onto Switch?
No, it has not. No, there's not many 3DS games that have been re-released on Switch, and the ones that they have done are weird choices, like Miitopia. Like who was asking for that to be put on Switch? I'm not sure.
Because there was a fair bit of controversy with Miitopia, wasn't there, early on?
Yeah, I don't know. I think
was it Miitopia or was it a different?
No, I think you're thinking of Miitomo, which was their mobile app.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Where the characters could say whatever they wanted, and you could make them swear in a Nintendo game.
And you couldn't have like certain sexual preferences and stuff like that. It was all very, very.
It was a bit messed up for sure. But yeah. Miitopia was a 3DS RPG where you played the RPG as Mii characters, and
sure.
was not very good, did not review very well, but that was the 3DS game they chose to bring back when they could have brought back, I don't know, Ever Oasis or like some of these other niche 3DS games that were a lot better. But yeah. Oh well.
For sure. You've definitely piqued my interest with Codenames Theme, and like I said, it's one I've known about for a good while, and I've heard people talk about for a while, but I've never actually dabbled with it. But
my recommendation actually is if you haven't played Valkyria Chronicles, I probably would recommend playing that first, just to see if you like that type of game. Because it's a very specific kind of strategy game, and I think Valkyria Chronicles probably does it the best out of any of those that I've played. So yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've had
no worries. Thanks for having me.
A hell of a time. It's been nice to have this sort of conversation with you, because generally we only talk when we're on Game for All together, for instance. What have you got much planned for the this Nintendo Life podcast? Anything big coming up? Anything fun you're looking forward to with that?
I mean, I'm looking forward to some releases coming later this year. I have waited 19 years for a sequel to Metroid Fusion.
I'm so excited. It looks so cool.
I am absolutely like buzzing about Metroid Dread. I didn't think it would come to pass that we would get a brand new canon 2D Metroid that follows on from where Fusion left off. Fusion being one of my favorite games of all time, probably my number 2 behind Breath of the Wild. Absolutely love that game.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm thrilled about that. So I'm looking forward to talking about that when it comes out. WarioWare, obviously, Super Monkey Ball coming back. There's so much good stuff coming to Switch later this year.
Super Monkey Ball is actually why I got a Switch Lite, because my my girlfriend she loves Super Monkey Ball. Like when it got announced, I was like, hey, guess what they're doing? And she was like, no way. So I had to pick one up so we can both play it, sort of thing.
100%, yeah.
But yeah, WarioWare is one as well, where when it released, I'm just gonna get a bunch of friends over and we're just gonna have a night. Yeah, because it's just stupid fun. I haven't been able to play one properly for ever, sort of thing. I've seen little bits and I've always wanted to play one, but I've never actually got hands on, sort of thing. I love those sort of games. I love the silly mini game competition sort of thing. I cannot wait. That looks like such a fun game. I cannot wait for that. And obviously Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, of course, when that comes.
Yeah,
take your time, man. Like I'm
absolutely
here, you know?
Absolutely. Do you think it's coming next year?
I hope so. I hope it releases the same day as Horizon Forbidden West, just because that's hilarious to me.
That would be.
Just pit those games against each other again. Why not?
That would be incredible. Yeah. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed your time here. Where can people find you and the stuff you make?
Yeah, you can find me at Lord NBZ on Twitter. I am also on... I mean, the podcast is on Twitter as well, which is at TNL Podcast. But the podcast itself is called This Nintendo Life. If you just look that up in podcasting apps or Spotify or wherever, you'll find it. So we're not that hard to find on the internet.
Awesome. They've got a really cool profile picture.
Classic Game Boy, yes.
I love
classic
it.
Game Boy
It's
thumbnail.
very, very cool. And you got like
Thank
cool
you.
artwork for like you and Bally.
We did,
as well,
yeah.
haven't you?
We
Very
commissioned from an artist who was in the Giant Bomb community and who has done like amazing doodles of the Giant Bomb crew. And so we approached her and were like, hey, can you do that for us? And
very cool.
Made a beautiful piece of art with us in the King of Red Lion from Wind Waker, which is one of our favorite games together. So yeah,
very, very cool. Very cool. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you everyone for watching this, because obviously we're on video now. It's the second time we're doing it. I actually remembered to press record this time, so that's a learning thing already. This, like I said before, will be a monthly thing. It's going to be spaced out a bit more, so I've just got more time to spend on reviews and stuff like that. I have got a couple of those coming. Hopefully Bioshock is soon. But yeah, once again, thank you for joining me. We will be back again next month with a new episode of Eat Sleep Game Audio Log. But until then, take care and goodbye.
see ya.